With the popularity of independent-released games, indie developers are always trying new or interesting ideas, or sometimes bringing ideas back from the past, like classic arcade games where your goal is mostly focused on getting a high score, more so than completing levels. And a new game has that same idea in mind, My Night Job. It is an homage to classic horror games and has a lot of retro style of games located within it. But is this a new horror classic, or is it just a scary mess? My Night Job is a pure arcade-style game where your goal is really to see how high of a score you can get and compare that to others around the world, as well as just trying to beat the high scores on the already in-game established leaderboard. My Night Job has a ton of references to various different horror games and horror movies spread throughout the entire giant mansion that you get to explore. If you're a horror buff, you're going to notice a lot of little references in almost every single element of the game. The core gameplay has you rescuing civilians in a giant mansion that is being overrun by monsters. A lot of typical classic monster-esque villains like killer plants or zombies, Jawa-esque creatures. You have chimeras, evil robots with Gatling guns, and a few other things that are going to try to get in your way by killing you or trying to kill the civilians that you're trying to rescue. At the beginning of the game, you're given a couple of objectives. Make sure that the mansion stays intact and save at least 100 civilians. You find the civilians all throughout the mansion, and they randomly spawn in, so once you've been through a room and you've saved a few civilians, if you come back later on, there may be new ones for you to save and rescue. Once you have a group of civilians up to 10 at one given time, you then go to one of the various helipads located in the mansion, and you can drop them off, and you'll get bonus items or bonus points depending upon the amount of civilians that you end up saving. There's also a few key special civilians that you can find throughout the course of the mansion that are located with different tokens. If you find these tokens, you can go up to them and activate them. You can either pay in order to get them, or sometimes it's just random if you end up getting those special civilians. These special civilians, once dropped off at the helipad, will usually give you an item, like the clown that will give you a pill that turns you into a monstrous clown yourself, allowing you to basically go Doom Berserk mode, running through the mansion and punching your way through every enemy that gets in your way for a period of time. You'll also have the old lady who will give you a scary cat that you can pop down, and the cat goes crazy and kills every single thing in the room. You also have the extremely beneficial nurse who ends up giving you a syringe that will instantly revive you if you end up dying. Besides being killed off by all the various enemies, you can also fail at any time if you end up having too many rooms in the mansion destroyed prior to you saving the 100 civilians. At any point during the game, the rooms will start to fill up with monsters. When there's too many monsters in there, the color of the room will start to change, located in the map in the lower right corner, which is extremely helpful to let you know where all the staircases, elevators, and just basically what's going on in the mansion. It'll go to yellow, meaning the room's congested, and then go to red when there's too many enemies in there and they're stomping on the ground and trying to destroy the room itself. The room will then start to lose health, and you have to get to the room and clear out the monsters, and then it will go back to yellow or green status, where it won't be losing any health. But the problem is, it doesn't regain any health as well. So once it bottoms out and all its health goes away, the room is destroyed. You can still go into it, but no new civilians will spawn, and after 4 rooms are destroyed, it's game over. Movement-wise, you can just walk and run your way through the different rooms, but you can also hit the dash button at any time in order to do a really quick dash. However, while dashing through, you don't save any civilian that you end up passing. So if you go through a civilian, you're going to have to stop and then backtrack just a few steps in order to make sure that they're with you before continuing on. Unfortunately, while the civilians do follow you for a good amount, if they end up getting hit by enemies, that'll slow them down, and if you get too far away from the civilians, they'll just stop in their tracks and wait for you to come back. The civilians range though in all different types though. You'll have lots of civilians that can't really benefit you at all, but then you'll have other ones that already come equipped with a weapon, such as a melee weapon or a shotgun, in which case they will actually aid you for as long as you keep them around before dropping them off at the helipad. Some of these guys are well worth keeping until you end up filling up your entire civilian inventory and then dropping them all off at once, since they will benefit you. In order to destroy the monster horde, though, you're going to need weapons, and there's a few different types of weapons, but a ton of different types of weapons all throughout the mansion. Every single room that you walk into will have at least one weapon for you to pick up, so you can actually defend yourself. You can use your fist if you want to, but it's pretty weak, as well as you're probably going to take a lot of damage when fighting things off. But at least you have that, so you have some kind of weapon, even when you have nothing in your hands. Now, you'll have a couple of different of the main types of weapons, like you'll have melee weapons. These are like umbrellas and canes. You can swing them quicker, they last a decent amount of time, but they don't do a whole lot of damage. You'll have heavier objects like crates or mini fridges or coat racks that you can then slam down hard on enemies, hitting a wider space of enemies and draining their health really quickly, but unfortunately, usually these items don't last all that long. Every weapon that you use after only a few hits will break, and you're going to have to find another weapon quickly in order to help you out. There's also the firearms, like shotguns, and you get these by dropping off civilians at the helipad. Every time you bring a civilian to the helipad, you'll be rewarded with a bonus item. Now, this may be health, this may be money, which works as the currency to buy those random civilian tokens throughout the course of the mansion, as well as your total final score is how much money you end up having. But you can also get health, as well as the random firearms, like the shotgun, to blast your way through a series of rooms. Depending upon how many civilians you're bringing back to the helipad at that time, will warrant you more ammo for whatever particular firearm you're rewarded. There's also a few specialty weapons as well in the mansion, like the chainsaw. Now, this does not seem to respawn, at least during the course of my playthroughs of the game, so you only get one thing with the chainsaw, but it lasts a good amount of time, and you can just run through enemies, room after room, and easily clear them out with this thing. It's easily my favorite weapon to use at any point during the game. What makes My Night Job fun and very addictive in short bursts is the fact that you have this big mansion and there's always rooms filling up with monsters, and once you get to the top of the mansion and try to save one floor, you're probably going to be immediately having to run all the way back down to the basement in order to save rooms down there. You're constantly watching the map in the corner to see which rooms are filling up with monsters. You'll quickly realize it may be worth it to sacrifice a civilian or two in order to quickly run to another room far away from you in order to try to stop that from being totally destroyed. The graphic style in the game is the sprite-based retro style, similar in some ways to the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World game. The gameplay reminds me a lot of other horror games, such as Zombies Ate My Neighbors. You're rescuing civilians or neighbors here, as well as Dead Rising. You're fighting a whole bunch of enemies using various different types of weapons all throughout the mansion, as well as also rescuing and escorting people. It also has a bit of Bonanza Brothers, the classic Sega game, where you have to move yourself up to the helipad at the end of a level in order to cash in all the treasures you just stole from various different museums and banks. And here, you have to save civilians and take them to helipads and then drop them off for your reward. So there's a lot of little references to other styles of classic games here, including all those horror references as well. My Night Job is a pretty fun game, and I really wanted to love this game, but there just isn't quite enough there that I think is going to keep you playing for a long period of time. Just know going in, this is strictly an arcade style of game, and there isn't much more for you to get once you've completed one playthrough other than trying to beat your high score. I was hoping once I completed the game's main objectives, I would unlock more objectives, or harder objectives, or just some more stuff. The mansion is quite large, and there are some secrets within the mansion itself for you to find and locate throughout it, and just overall the gameplay, like I said, can be pretty fun and addictive, especially for a short period of time. But in the end, with all that said, I'm going to be giving My Night Job a 5 out of 10. I wanted to give it a little bit higher, and I love the direction, art style, and just the core gameplay, but it just needs to be a bit more there for me to be able to keep playing. But anyway guys, that's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.